morning, everyone. I'm glad to be here, and I'm learning so much about a lot of other extension activities. So, I'm given an assignment to talk about different examples of climate extension projects for agriculture, where climate change information is integrated into either existing programs or new programs. So, it's for 10 minutes. It's a roller coaster ride. So let's start. Um, so here's an outline. I'll mention about these four extension projects that I was part of. And first two projects are from my previous job at University of Nebraska in Lincoln, and rest of them are from California. So first one is ensuring sustainable agriculture in face of climate change. That's a professional development program for that we did for extension and NRCS in North Central region. Climate Masters of Nebraska. I heard Climate Masters from Martha's presentation. So that program was originally from Oregon, and so we adopted that program and started in Nebraska, and it was very successful. We got funding from EPA, then Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality, and then NSF also funded that program later on. But then I moved here. So then the third one I would like to mention is Carbon Neutrality Initiative. It's a big initiative in California, and ANR is part of that. And the fourth one is the more of a social science and modeling integration type of project, where understanding and bridging the gaps in farmers' climate information needs. The first project, climate change professional development. So, as I said, it was for 12 states in the North Central region, and it was focused for extension educators and NRCS in that region. And our main idea was to do this workshop, which is more science-based, locally relevant. And on top of that, we also wanted farmers' involvement in the whole dialogue, and so we wanted to get their views on climate change, and so we had a farmers panel and their discussions in this project as well. So as a part of this project, first thing we did was develop a resource handbook. As we know, there's a lot of credible sources of climate information out there. And so if you Google it, you can find tens and thousands of this kind of information. So rather than creating one more, we decided to compile from those credible sources, compile information that is more relevant to ag extension and NRCS colleagues. So we created the resource handbook. The other thing we did was develop a core curriculum lessons. The idea was that whenever extension educators have their programming with their clientele, if they want to incorporate climate and sustainability, they can use this readily available curriculum and pull out the information that they need and put it in their presentation. So that was our main goal. And then we did workshops, two workshops in Michigan and Nebraska covering 12 states, and we invited 60 to 70 extension professionals from those 12 states to take participation in that. And we had a webinar series and project evaluation to know what really worked in that whole project and what did not. So we asked them, when you communicate climate change information, what are your challenges and what are your limitations on communicating this type of information? So in terms of opportunities, having resources, presenting strategies in a way that discuss multiple benefits, reaching out to younger farmers, conservation incentives, new market, change of crops, show that there are likely winners, longer growing season, which means that more yield for annual cropping systems, at least. Drought as a driver. So those are the motivations. In terms of challenges, extreme views on both sides, translating funding and education into farmers' behavioral change. That's tough to document. Long-term investment planning. Economics of change, faculty not fully engaged in locally relevant issues at the field scale. Overall, This project worked really well. They increased their understanding, motivation, ability to answer climate change questions with their clientele. They also liked co-learning with farmers in this project. But only 18% of them did use that curriculum lesson that we developed for them. And when we asked, the response was that this follow-up survey was 6 months after the workshop, and I said 6 months is not enough. If we want to fully integrate this kind of information into programming, at least we need a year or more than a year. So in the follow-up survey, that number did increase quite substantially. And here are the websites if you want to look at those resource handbook and core curriculum lessons. The other project that I wanted to mention is Climate Masters of Nebraska. So as somebody mentioned, this is modeled after classic master gardener approach, but in this case, we provided 10 weeks of training on this different topic areas, and they learned about ways in which they can reduce carbon footprint into their day-to-day life. And once they finish the class, they have to go out and teach others on what they learned, and they have to report us back. And so we did 3 or 4 this kind of workshops when I was in Nebraska, and also we had educational tours and classroom activities, hands-on, and this kind of. Overall, that project was very successful. More than 1,000 hours of volunteer work reported by, and there were many types of volunteer efforts were done. This was more geared for community in general, but this type of program can be tailored to other sectors, agriculture, natural resources. Third project I wanted to mention is the Carbon Neutrality Initiative. As a part of that initiative, we have this faculty curriculum workshop. So my colleague and I led this. It was a retreat for A&R academics. So, and what we really wanted is initiative endeavors to increase climate change and sustainable education with the emphasis of reaching out to those for them climate change and sustainability is not their main focus. And so we asked in our academics to come up with ideas in which they can incorporate this climate change. And these are the strategic initiatives from which we invited in our academy. So it was cross-disciplinary. And here are some of the examples of efforts that are planned. This retreat was done this year, so the efforts are going to be happening next year. Day camps with youth implemented by staff and volunteers to include curriculum for carbon neutrality, sustainability, green technology, 4-H curriculum emphasizing climate change. California Natural is incorporating carbon neutrality and climate change, and water-focused adaptation articles and fact sheets. And the last one I want to talk about is bridging the gap between climate model outputs and farmers' decision making. As we know that the scale at which we get climate model outputs is different from the scale at which farmers make decisions. And so first thing we did was to identify what are those climate information needs for farmers. And once we know, can we get the model output which are more customized to their needs, and also evaluate the skills in modeling skills. And so this is a collaborative project with Cooperative Extension, Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory for Climate Modeling Study, and UC Berkeley and UC Merced. So it's still an ongoing project, but any project where we can incorporate farmers' input and creating outputs which has more effective way of usage for their decision making purposes. And when asked about communicating climate information, changing climate is still a relatively new subject, and growers must be informed of changes of climate patterns in as many forums and through as many channels as possible. The more they hear about it, the better informed they will be. Thank you so much.